I'm Amy, and welcome back, and it is that time of the month again. Time to talk about what I watched last month. This is going to be a long one, so get some snacks, sit in. I'll try to go through it as fast as I can because I watched a lot this month. And right off the top, I will say there are some of these movies that I watched in 2x speed. That's something I started doing just because I want to be able to watch more stuff. I listen to podcasts at 2x speed. I watch movies at 2x speed, but only because, and I have rules about when I can and can't watch movies like this, because there are movies, like new movies, especially movies in theaters, I can't watch at 2x speed, but I also don't want to watch them at 2x speed. And most movies, like if I'm taking notes for the movie, like I'm going to be doing a video on it, I won't do it, especially 1001 movies. There are some 1001 movies that I will watch faster, and I do this because one, I want to watch more, but two, if it's in English, I can still concentrate on what I'm watching or like what's playing and be able to concentrate on what I'm doing. For some reason, I can process it faster. Like if I'm watching it in regular speed, it feels extremely slow to me. I don't know if that's just because I'm doing 2x speed now, and I know it's not the way the filmmakers intended it, but I also really only do it on films where it doesn't necessarily matter. So you'll see, I'll point out some of them that I did 2x speed on just because it doesn't really matter that I did 2x speed on it. It doesn't change the pacing of the film. Like a lot of times there'll be long pauses and things. Yeah, I understand why it's kind of not great to do this, but in the interest of wanting to watch as many movies as I possibly can, it's something I have to do. All right, we're gonna scroll to the very bottom. There was a lot. I told you there was a lot. I think I watched at least 100 movies, almost 100 movies. So I'm gonna go through this as quick as I possibly can. The first thing I watched this month was Bo Burnham's Inside, because the day it came out, I was at Disneyland and I wasn't able to watch it, so I watched it the next day. Very great. I absolutely loved it. I love Bo Burnham. I've loved Bo Burnham since the beginning of his YouTube career. He's great. 8th Grade is one of my absolute favorite movies of all time. And his stand-up specials are great as well. This was probably my favorite. And then I watched Scooby-Doo for the podcast. I love Scooby-Doo. I love the original live-action Scooby-Doo. And I continued with my Fast and Furious watch-through. I think... Oh, yeah. There was a couple things I forgot that I did not... I watched at the end of May because I had filmed that video early. I had watched Psycho Gorman on Shudder before or after I had filmed that video. So it's great if you like sci-fi, kind of stupid, funny stuff. It's kind of a horror movie. It's very fun. I recommend it. But then I went, after watching Bo Burnham and Scooby-Doo, I continued on my Fast and Furious rewatch before F9 came out, and I watched Tokyo Drift. The next day I watched pretty much the rest of them. I watched Fast and Furious, Fast 5, Fast 6, and then the next day I finished off with Fast 7, and the next day I watched the rest of what was left, Fate of the Furious and Hobbs and Shaw. So I kind of wiped out all of those, and I think... No, I watched all of those regular speed. I didn't start doing that until halfway through the month. But anyways, let's move on. After watching Fate of the Furious, I watched Hitman's Bodyguard because I was going to see Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard early the next day. And that day I also watched the first 4 Saw movies. This is when I started watching them at 2x speed, only because, and I'm watching these all for the first time, except for Saw 5 I had already seen before, but I had watched Dead Meat Kill Counts for these. I knew the lore just because there are some horror movies, I don't do torture porn movies like Saw and Hostel. I absolutely hate that kind of stuff, but I had done some research, or I looked at the timeline a little bit for Saw, and I kind of know exactly what's happening. So these I felt safe watching at 2 times speed. I also watched In the Heights, and because that was a new movie, I watched it regular because I watched it on my TV. I have an extension on my computer that lets me watch 2 times speed. Anyways, whatever. I watched In the Heights. It was good. I'm not a huge musical fan, but I enjoyed myself. The next night I watched Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard a little bit early. It was okay. I kind of felt the same way about it as I felt about the first movie. And then I watched the second Scooby-Doo movie for the podcast, and I watched The Case Against Adan Syed, and I watched this. It's a mini series. I watched it in 2 times speed only because I had completely listened to the Serial podcast years before. I knew what was happening, and I wanted to get through the entire series in one go. And the only parts where I really like, if I'm watching something at 2 times speed and it's something that I'm interested in, it'll make me pay closer attention to what's happening. And I watched it, and there was a couple episodes where they weren't recapping anything from the podcast. They were talking about stuff that happened after the podcast came out. So that was interesting to watch. And then I watched the first 2 Taken movies. I still have to watch the third Taken movie. Again, I watched those at 2 times speed. And then I finished up the 1001 movies from last month that I was supposed to watch. So from May's 1001 movies I was supposed to watch, which was only 3 Colors Red and Weekend, but I watched also 3 Colors White just because it was in the box set I have in my Criterion set. And I also watched A Man Escaped, which is another 1001. I think it was one for this month, like for June, that I had to watch. And I watched Primal, which is a Nicolas Cage movie on Hulu. This one I did watch at 2 times speed just because it's bonkers. It's Nick Cage. It doesn't matter if I watch it at 2 times speed or 1 times like regular speed. It's great if you want some fun Nick Cage stuff, especially before Pig comes out in a couple months. I highly recommend it. It is pure Nick Cage, and I think I really liked my review for this one. At some point in the very distant future, when there is no more Nick to Cage, the only person who could ever match the Cage would be Kevin Durant, and I'm here for it. If you don't know who Kevin Durant is, he's one of the guys in Lost. Well, I think he's like the main head bad guy in season 3 or 4 of Lost when they're trying to get off when they're on the boat. I know him mostly from that, but he also is one of those actors that could very easily be a Nick Cage type. And after that, the next day I watched The Keepers, which is the very memed Russian Lord of the Rings. It is in 2 parts on YouTube. It is in Russian. They do have kind of shaky subtitles on them, like they're not the best. I did watch this at 2 times speed because it doesn't really matter, and it helped a lot because there were moments where it was just the camera was just sitting there, and it I would have been so I just would not have been able to handle it if I was watching at 1 time speed. I think at the end I bumped it up to 3 times speed because it was that slow. It's 100 and how long is this? I think it says on here. Maybe it doesn't. It's 114 minutes, so yeah, it's long. I also watched the Amusement Park, which is the I think it was made in 1973. It's one of the film. It's almost a PSA for how we treat our elderly. By Romero was commissioned to make this. It's really great. It's on Shudder if you want to see it, but it's really great. I enjoyed myself watching it. The next day I watched Luca. It's such a cute film. This one, of course, it's a new film. I did not watch it 2 times speed. It's on Disney Plus. If you have Disney Plus, you don't have to pay the premiere access for it. And that day I also watched Life of the Party at 2 times speed because I don't think I could have handled that movie at 1 times, at normal speed. I'm not a fan of some of the Melissa McCarthy stuff. I also watched Scoob, the newer animated Scooby-Doo movie, Trolls World Tour, The Croods, and The Other Guys, all at 2x speed just because I wanted to get through them. I really liked The Other Guys. I haven't watched it in a while, but I have seen it. I remembered I had seen it after watching it this time. And I realized I really like Mark Wahlberg in stupid, fun comedy stuff. Like, where he gets to be kind of the straight man to a comedian. And I really enjoyed it. I did not remember enjoying it all that much. Trolls World Tour was not great. And Scrooge was okay, and I kind of was really only watching it to bump Nick Cage up on my most watched stats, like most watched actor stats. The next day, I watched a couple Mummy movies, which The Mummy Returned and The Scorpion King, to bump The Rock up on my most watched, and I think he is my most watched of the year so far with 10 movies. I also then the next day watched the new life-size movie. It's a Christmas movie, but I watched it in the middle of June. The Croods, New Age, and Josie and the Pussycats, Gotti, and Short Circuit. I watched a lot this day. All of them were on 2x speed. I did not like Life Size. I like the original Life Size with Lindsay Lohan. It's fantastic. It's great. But this one, not good. Croods, it was okay. I can take or leave those movies. I absolutely loved Josie and the Pussycats. I wish I had seen this movie when I was younger. It is fun and everything that I want to be when I was younger. It came out, I think, in 2001. So I would have been like 11. It would have completely changed my life. It would have been just everything I wanted. And then I watched Gotti, which that was a hard one to get through. Even at 2x speed, it was really bad. It was not fun, not good. And then to cleanse my palate, I watched Short Circuit, which is really great. It's got the Goots in it, and I love Steve Guttenberg. The next day, I watched Horse Feathers, which is a Marx Brothers film. There's gonna be a lot of Marx Brothers films in here because they had a big handful of them leaving the Criterion Channel, and I wanted to watch them before they left. I also watched Independence Day in 2012, which are two Roland Emmerich films. We watched Independence Day for the podcast, and then I talk about it in the podcast that's coming out, or it came out yesterday, that Independence Day felt like, I felt like I was watching The Day After Tomorrow, but with aliens instead of climate change, while watching Independence Day, which it had been a while since I'd seen that movie. Independence Day, not The Day After Tomorrow, because I've watched The Day After Tomorrow too much. And so I watched 2012 because I thought that might be very much like The Day After Tomorrow, so that's why I watched both of those Roland Emmerich films. Then the next day was when I watched a ton of stuff. I watched a bunch of Marx Brothers films. I think I watched all the Marx Brothers films that are leaving except for one. Actually, no, I watched all the Marx Brothers films that are leaving. Monkey Business, Room Service, Go West, At the Circus, and A Day at the Races are all Marx Brothers films. I really like them. I love the Marx Brothers. Then I watched Spencer Confidential, which was the bonus features review for this month. It is another Mark Wahlberg film. I thought it was going to be kind of like The Other Guys, but it was not, and I was very disappointed in that. If you want to see my full thoughts, you can go check out my bonus features review on Patreon. And I'm still trying to watch through all the Bond films in release order. So I watched Thunderball, and then I watched Hotel Transylvania just because I wanted, something lighthearted. And it's okay. I think I had seen it before. I did not mark it as a rewatch, but there were parts of it that I'm like, I really remember everything that's happening, but I couldn't remember if I had seen it before. The next day was actually the day that we had recorded the podcast. So after recording it, I watched the second Independence Day Resurgence. Nope, not good. And I watched Pixels, which is another movie that is not good. And then the next day was another day where I watched a ton of stuff. It doesn't even fit on this page. I watched Smiles of a Summer Night, which was one of the 1001 movies for this month. Also, Come and See and The Servant, which were also 1001 movies for this month. And then I think Animal Crackers was one of the last movies that I needed to watch of the Marx Brothers before it left. I watched LFG, which was the new documentary about the U.S. women's soccer team trying to get equal pay. And I watched a bunch of short films, which was Workers Leaving the Lumiere Factory, The Arrival of a Train at La Cicotte, I don't know how to pronounce that, made fun of me, The Kiss, and Annabelle's Serpentine Dance, which are very, very old, like original, like first things that were put to film from the 1800s. And then I watched Thin Blue Line, which was the 1001 movie for this month, and my patrons picked a great one. And the next night I watched F9, which that movie I have mixed feelings on. You'll see a review on it soon. I watched A Night at the Opera, which is the actual last Marx Brothers movie I had to watch that was leaving Criterion, and I watched Patton because that was also leaving Criterion, and it was a 1001 movie, so I watched it so I could have that checked off the list. And I watched some more Bond movies. You Only Live Twice. Well, I guess it was just that one then. And then I watched A Fantastic Fear of Everything, which is a Simon Pegg movie. I really enjoyed that as well. And I watched Casino Royale. Not the new one, the old one. Like, I did not enjoy it. It was very hard for me to get to. I was watching it at 2 times speed, and I wanted it to end. It was just, it was co-written by Woody Allen. I didn't realize that, but I kind of felt it while I was watching it, and then when I looked up who the writers were, he was on there. And he also was in it for a little bit, and we all know my feelings about Woody Allen. Let's move on. I watched a bunch more Criterion stuff, Aladdin and the Magic Lamp, and Adventures on the New Frontier, which Adventures on the New Frontier is a documentary-ish kind of thing. It's like an ABC News type thing about JFK. Aladdin and the Magic Lamp is a short animated film. It's very good. It follows a similar storyline to the Disney Aladdin, but it's different, I guess, in a way, and I really enjoyed it. It was very beautifully animated. I also watched Martin Scorsese's Quarantine short film, which I felt like I was just watching my grandpa talk, even though my grandpa doesn't care about movies like as much as Martin Scorsese does. And then I watched a bunch of Safdie brothers short films. Just 2. We're Going to the Zoo and The Black Balloon, which are really great. If you have the Criterion channel, there are a bunch of Safdie short films on there. That night, I also went to see Zola early-ish, I think. Well, Zola came out on Wednesday last week, so I went to see it like a day early, the day it came out. So it's kind of like when movies come out on Friday, you see it on Thursday. Anyways, I really enjoyed it. I loved the Twitter thread, and I've been waiting to see this movie since it was announced. The next day, I watched a bunch of stuff, which was the last day of the month. I watched Days of Heaven, which was another film, 1001 film. It was leaving Criterion, so I watched it, checked that off the list. And then I watched a ton of Bond films. On Her Majesty's Secret Service, Diamonds Are Forever, and Live and Let Die. I am about halfway through Bond now, I think. I'm excited for that. I think after I finish Bond, I have a list of Godzilla films that I'm going to get through. Then later that night, I also watched G.I. Joe, The Rise of Cobra, and G.I. Joe Retaliation, just so I can get through those and be able to watch Snake Eyes when that comes out. I think later this month, yeah. They're okay. I mean, I forgot that I had watched G.I. Joe Rise of Cobra until I watched it, and then I only watched G.I. Joe Retaliation because The Rock. Gotta bump DJ up. And then finally, the last thing I watched that last month was Baja, which I don't even know how to explain this movie. It feels like a straight-to-video movie, but I think it was actually in theaters. It's not the best. I only watched it because Jake Thomas from Lizzie McGuire is in it. He played the little brother, and yeah. I don't know why I watched that. It was not the best. But anyways, that's everything I watched movie-wise. I have not been watching a lot of TV. I started watching Avatar for the weekly podcast I do for patrons. I love doing that. I have seen Avatar before, not all of it, but most of it. And let's see what else. I still watch a lot of Twitch, and I listen to a lot of podcasts, which the playlist of my podcast is always linked in the description. I listen to podcasts at 2 times speed just because I want to get through them. There's a lot on that list, and I want to get through them as much as I possibly can. And I listen to podcasts while I'm working. I watch Twitch, listen to Twitch while I'm working, and I do most of this stuff while I'm at work. But honestly, it's just like more background ways to keep me focused on my actual work. It's a weird thing. A lot of people don't understand how or why I can do it, but I do it because that's the only way I can concentrate. But anyways, I think this is actually one of the shorter what I watched videos, just because I ran through everything. And I know people complain about how fast I talk. It's only because my brain is going at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and I gotta get the words out before I forget them or stumble over what I'm trying to say. So also, I think it's just like there was a lot to cover, and I tried to get through it as fast as I could. But anyways, let me know what you guys watched in the comments down below. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I really, truly do appreciate you. Whoever you are, let me know who you are in the comments down below, and let's be friends. If you enjoyed this, leave a like and subscribe if you're new, because I love talking about things, movies, TV shows, filmmaking, mystery, all that fun stuff. And I'll see you next time. Bye.